So, guys, I have here with me Lewis Jackson from CryptoLewLew, and I really respect this guy. I love his style and just the way he approaches this space with such a level of humility. And, just watching some of his videos and how he's going out there and really trying to help people to understand things that they haven't even thought about with respect to this digital asset space. The last video that he did on how he found his perfect accountant, I thought was absolutely fantastic, due to the fact that most folks aren't thinking about, they're more thinking about when am I going to get rich, other than what I'm going to do when I am rich. And so, Lewis, I thought that was absolutely amazing. And where do you come from? Like, in that space, where did you start off? Like, what's your background? Did your family, did you grow up around that, or, that kind of thing? Or did you just, your business acumen is what I'm really talking about there?
I appreciate that. I'll answer that question in a second, but I also want to say to everyone watching that watching Dave do these almost daily uploads is incredible. I don't think people, if you haven't created content before, you don't realize how difficult it is to make daily videos and have something to say every time and do it all with a smile on your face as well. So I also appreciate what you've brought to the table, and the community that you have is probably the most wholesome community I've seen in the space. So you're doing something right, and you're doing a lot of it too, which is I find myself seeing you've uploaded and thinking, man, I need to upload too. I need to keep up here, otherwise I'm gonna get left behind here. So I appreciate you saying that, but also back at you. So my family I grew up just as a normal person, middle class. My dad was in the police. The police doesn't earn a massive amount of money, especially versus the responsibility that they actually have.
Right.
Just much like teachers. I could go into all of that. Doesn't matter. But I say that to say that there wasn't much financial education in my household, but what's been kind of a common theme with me in my life throughout all of I played high level golf, high level squash, and tennis, and basically anything I've taken my hand to and actually tried, I've been pretty good at. And so that took me all the way to Arkansas to play golf at a university there. I played all around the world in different tournaments and stuff. One thing about me that I think has got me to this level of, I don't know what this level is, but I guess it's a point where there's a level of intensity that I operate with that is, I think is useful for me if I'm being in this line of business, because you have to have some sort of intensity to be able to keep up with the content and try and keep trying and not stopping. And I think that has been a bigger factor in anything else. The intensity, which if I want to learn something, the intensity I go to learn it, that's a bigger factor than any of my any influence that my background has had or education has had or anything like that. And so lots of people kind of ask how you must be super smart and stuff. I'm not super smart. I just try really hard. I make up for all of that with an intensity that I think most people have, that they don't really unlock. So when it comes to finances, I've never held a job that's paid me a lot of money. I've always been in that lower bracket of earning, but my brain has always been somewhere else. It's always been, how can I learn something else? How can I improve myself? Eventually it will pay off. And it was like all the things aligning for me when I learned about XRP properly. And I learned about cryptocurrency initially, and then realizing that, actually, I think it was Kathy Wood, of all people, that said something. She said, what did she say? She said, blockchain is going to be responsible for the power grid. And I remember at that time, I was like, what does that even mean? I thought blockchain was money.
Right.
How is the power grid? And so that sparked something in me. It was like, I know people have got rich from this. If I'm reading something like that or listening to something like that, and I don't know what it means, I'm probably not in the right group of people here. As in, I'm not in the right group of people who are going to, the people who don't know that stuff or don't know about blockchain to be able to make those connections, they're
Mm-hmm.
not the ones who are going to rise up.
Right.
And so part of me also believes that there is a balance and equilibrium in the world that has to be maintained. I think like IMF and the World Economic Forum, and I think they acutely understand that there is an equilibrium in the world. You need a certain
Mm-hmm.
percentage of people to be below the poverty line. You need a certain
Yeah.
percentage of people to be in the middle, and
Right.
you
Right.
need a
Right.
certain people to be in the top 1%.
Right.
You just have to
Right.
have it, otherwise it won't be balanced.
Right.
So everyone can't be rich. So
It
you
seems like it
ultimately,
also naturally flows that way as well, you know.
yeah,
It's not like
there
for
will
instance, yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
there will be people who
Mm.
have that desire and intensity to learn,
Mm-hmm.
and they learn something valuable, and that turns into monetary value in the future. And
Right.
there will be the people who see it and ignore it. There'll
Yeah.
be the people who see it and don't believe it. There's
Mm-hmm.
all those people filter out into society, and it creates this balance that
Mm-hmm.
exists.
Mm-hmm.
But the balance isn't forced upon you.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
completely up to you.
And that's what a free
Even if
market does, you know, in the sense
absolutely,
of, you know, like when you look at some of the socialist or if you want to take it like the whole communist type of thing where, you know, okay, you're growing up, well, you're going to be a shoemaker, you're going to be a this, you're going to be a that. And it just seems to crumble. It just doesn't seem to truly work. But it's interesting how when you allow a free market to kind of take place, how you know people just seem to fall into the places that you know so that the society and the economy functions. One thing
yeah.
that you were saying there that really resonates with me that you were describing is, you know, you're talking about having purpose, really, that's something that resonates within you, and never underestimating the power of purpose. What's really interesting these days, it just seems like a lot of a good amount of our society seems to not truly know what purpose they fulfill or where they're going, and are they really moving that way on purpose, or are they just following in the flow, you know, like it's like, you know, when the guy gets in, you know, he gets in his canoe and he hops into the river, you know, and unless he's paddling upstream, he's just going where the river's taking him, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I
and
like
it's
that.
kind of like that. You have to have purpose. And so for what you were saying there, and another thing that I found that was quite interesting that tweaked me when you were speaking is about, hey, look, you know, I've worked these various jobs. Now I don't see that I have earned like tremendous amounts of, you know, monetary gain from those things. But then I stumbled on this space and it empowered me. I realized I could take what I already had, that drive and that purpose, and I could utilize it in a way where it has liberated me now. Like that's what I hear you saying, that it's opened up a door that did not exist before. Before, you know, you were helping to build somebody else's dream. Now
Mm-hmm.
you're in a position where you could start to realize some of your own dreams. And that's one of the things I think in my space anyway, I try to really encourage the community is, hey, don't let somebody, you know, talk you out of your dream. And when we talk about this space, and you know how a lot of folks have gotten into XRP, but you know they're kind of like their confidence in it is being dictated by messages that are coming in from everywhere else. And
Mm-hmm.
as a result, you know, that whole fear and greed index, you know, how they measure this market, they're like, well, up here, they're down here, they're like this, they're
Mm-hmm.
like that, they're like, how long? And I think for what you communicated, and also something that I really believe in, is being able to be a voice in this kind of space that says, hey, look, you don't have to be at this place where you're just let it flow. Just, you know, what you're holding now with respect to XRP. I mean, you can see the, you know, entire infrastructure of a new financial system being constructed right before our very eyes. And yet, you know, we're being told, oh, but you know, but don't worry about how the gas, well, this is the gas. And you know, hey, you know, so we can watch it happening. And from that perspective, if you really have a confidence in the protocol and what you can really see it unfolding, you're not even going to have to worry about it. It's almost like there was a guy who used to come on American TV, and he would sell this contraption for roasting things, and he was really famous, you know, and the guy's name was Ron Popeil, and he used to have this saying, set it and forget it. And that's kind of how I think about it
Yeah,
sometimes. You
that's
know?
right. It is like that.
So
I think just to go back onto purpose, It's
Sure.
not necessarily that even I understand what my purpose is. To I just believe with every ounce of my body that the
Mm-hmm.
harder I work, the
Mm-hmm.
better it will be in the end.
Right.
And my dad used to say something, because I played a lot of golf, high level golf,
Yep.
and I used to always come in from the round of golf from the tournament, whatever. If I didn't win on that occasion, because I went on quite a good streak of winning when I
Yeah.
at one point. um, I would blame it on other things, external things, coming down to I was unlucky today.
Ah,
Um,
okay, okay.
and so that I was blaming everything else, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad says something, and I don't forget it, because it just rings true every single time. The
Yep.
harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah, that's a big, I
Um,
love that.
and so that's the way I look at it now. The harder I research, the more I understand,
Right.
the higher my conviction,
Yes.
the less able I am to be shaken out of any of my assets,
Right, right, right.
especially these utility tokens, and the
Mm-hmm.
better it'll be as a result. And yeah, call that lucky if you want. I don't care. I'll be rich.
Mm-hmm. No, what you said there is really powerful, because the fact of the matter is you can't give somebody else your conviction. And a lot of times, folks will, like, YouTube, I think, is great as a confirmation and as a support. But the true conviction of what you're getting involved in is going to come because of the research a person's done for themselves. And I agree with you. It's available to everybody to do that. We're not unique in any way. And, one of the things I think that really resonates with me, the answers that I became the most convinced by were the ones I found for myself. Those
Mm,
ones I went out and found for myself are the ones that I was absolutely most convinced by, even though I've been able to, connect with like-minded persons and things like that, and certainly can find, that camaraderie of agreement. But the reality is my conviction, and I suspect it's the same with yourself, has come more deeply by the individual research that I've done. I am 100% convinced. I have absolutely zero doubt. And as a result of that, I have perfect peace about it. I don't think
yeah,
anyone could shake me out of my position at this point, And from what I've gathered, from what I've heard you talk about on your channel, because you're talking about things that are not just only about XRP. You just talked a bunch of things, and you're getting ready to talk about a bunch of things about setting up legal structures in order to
yeah.
facilitate management of your wealth going forward, which, man, that is just truly fantastic what you're doing there. How did you come to that realization that you have to have, a well thought out and crafted strategy for when you do become wealthy like that?
Well, I think it's watching because Bitcoin and Ethereum is primarily what I had before, and I saw some gains, nothing like what you saw. But what I did do was I got out at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And so my thing wasn't like I left. I got out almost at the top. I'll boast and say
Yeah.
it was mostly luck really. But I was following Fibonacci,
Likewise.
so it kind of made sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but what did happen is that when it crashed and went all the way back down to the bottom, my all I could think about was, man, if I didn't get lucky and leave at that point, where
Mm-hmm.
would I be right now? And that was
Right.
enough to actually scare me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I thought I didn't have a plan then. I got lucky.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
can't get lucky every time.
Mm-hmm.
So let's double down. I doubled down on focusing on Fibonacci levels, and a lot of the people who were early in my
Mm-hmm.
channel know that, because basically every video was talking about Fibonacci's.
Yep. Yep.
I just think they're the truest, most accurate,
For the
biologically based.
retracements. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like
it's
them too.
unbelievable.
Yeah, it is.
Um, but then you realize, which was a realization for me later on, that utility is king, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
utility does not care about no Fibonacci's.
Absolutely. No, you're right
um,
about that.
but having the plan and the structure is was something that I found myself typing all through that bear market,
Mm-hmm.
typing um, exit strategy for this coin, exit strategy for this. And there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing coming up that was actually made sense. It wasn't speaking to me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so you see people saying, "Oh, it could get up to $5 for this token," and you go, "Okay, but you haven't told me Like I'm actually looking for levels to sell here. And I
Yeah.
know I'm not, you can't expect people to give you exact numbers, but I
Right.
thought if I could logically back up my ideas with Fibonacci's, which I really believe are the best, as I've said,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes sense to do so, and it's worked
Yeah.
for me in the past to use Fibonacci's,
Mm-hmm.
why can't I just say the Fibonacci levels? And then
Mm-hmm.
with those Fibonacci levels, what the dollar value is of those Fibonacci levels,
It
and
is what it
formulate a,
is.
it is what it is.
Yep.
It's actually outside of me. I'm just drawing them on.
Yep. Yep.
But also, it then provides a framework
Mm-hmm.
for a plan. And so you can set
Mm-hmm.
up your Fibonacci's and say at this level, Lewis uses this level and this level. I'm going to use
Mm-hmm.
this level and this level based on my tolerance. I don't think it will go that high, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But all of a sudden, what you've done is, and I had a document about this, a whole exit strategy document, which I've since removed since
Okay.
discovering utility.
Yep. Yep.
um, but that really helped people. It was like really, it
Mm-hmm.
actually provided a structure that was
Mm-hmm.
simple enough to where people could self-assign levels to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I saw the power that that had over people um, who were desperately looking for a plan, as I was.
Right.
Um, and it's extremely powerful because I now think the people in my community, at least the core community that were around in Fibonacci days,
Mm-hmm.
all of those guys have a plan. They all
Mm-hmm.
have a plan.
Right.
And considering my Discord or my YouTube subscribers almost at 50,000,
Yeah, you've done
which
really
is not it's
amazing.
not it's not a small audience. It's not a massive audience, but it's
Right.
not
Right.
small either.
Right. Right.
But I almost believe that there's a higher percentage of people with a plan in my audience than any other audience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I mean, there's thousands of people in my audience that actually have a plan.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like that's a, I guess if you're talking about purpose, it's a great
Well,
purpose
no,
to have.
and not only that, I mean, it's just that's a it's a fantastic commentary, for because that's the goal. I mean, the goal for us, I think, in this, those of us that are content creators, for the majority of us, it's not about how much notoriety we're able to achieve or any of that kind of nonsense. It's more, hey, look, I want to bring as many people with me as I possibly can and set them up for the best success that they could potentially have, educating them about the space, letting them know, hey, here's this opportunity, but also put them in a position like you just described there. Hey, here's a strategy, here's a plan that you can put in place that if you start thinking about it now will prepare you for then. I think the biggest thing is when you do establish those levels. So let's say you draw a set of stairs, you have your first exit here, your second exit here, your third exit here. When you hit that target, take it because we don't know that, we don't have that guarantee of whatever, but it's the discipline, because emotionally you see, well, it got to this number, whatever it is, got to this, and you think, well, should I really stick to my exit here and take out such and such a percent or move it here?
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be so disciplined at it because, otherwise you will get snared by the whole, psychology of the marketplace. I mean, I often say it's not the Main Street cheat sheet, it's the Wall Street cheat sheet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these guys
Yep.
know how to play the narrative in such a way that if you are not really emotionally, disconnected, like you, I love that, no emotion. If you've got the emotion in there, you're gonna get wrecked. I know, that's fantastic, I love that because
I've got to send you one, Dave.
oh
You
man,
got to
no,
give me
that's
your
cool, that's
size, and I'll
cool.
send you one.
Oh, I will. That's very sweet of you, man. Merry Christmas to me. Thank you so much. But I think it's fantastic because you're communicating just right there on your apparel. One of the absolutely fundamental key factors for genuine success is you've got to take the emotion out of it.
I made a video a while ago about motivation
Mm-hmm.
and risk tolerance,
Yeah.
and I can only speak from my perspective. And I'm 31 now. I made that video when I was 30, so I guess I was having uh, a thought about my whole life. Now I've just turned 30 or something, but I'd be interested to know,
Yeah.
considering you held on through that last bull run with your XRP,
Yeah.
what would you say your risk tolerance is, or no, how risky of an investment do you think XRP is, considering all the factors?
Mm.
Age,
Mm-hmm.
the utility,
Mm-hmm.
where you see it going in the future,
Mm-hmm.
time scale, time frame to actually turn that into real wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where do you place XRP on the risk scale?
Oh, right now I would say I feel zero risk. But of course, we can't come out and say, oh, there's zero risk because, some
No, but you can
people,
you can speak from your perspective.
yeah, from my perspective, to me, it's not about, because I don't plan on ever really selling it. So there's no real risk. I think right now it's just such a gift to accumulate it. And so for me, it would be the same thing if I was buying any other asset that I never planned on letting go of. Maybe let's say I was a collector of teacups. Well, there's no risk there. There's all that's there is enjoyment, right? And so all that's there is something I love to look at or utilize or maybe whatever, right? And my grandfather was a Scot and he loved his tea, he used to drink it out of a saucer and not even the cup. But anyway, needless to say, I'm using that as an example of, so for me, it's not about risk because what if I'm not risking it because it's not a gamble. I'm not investing it to sell it in that capacity. Now, certainly some of the other ones, yes, I'm assessing risk, but I'll give you an example. So when I was first getting in, as disciplined as I like to think I am, I was subject to every emotion that I just talked about. So I got in, and I remember back then there was Yearn Finance was coming out, and Yearn Finance had this big boom. Well, I missed that. Well, another one came out, and this one was called Soft Yearn Finance. And I thought, oh boy, this is my chance to get in. And I invested thousands of dollars into this thing. It was an absolute rug pull, and I lost absolutely, it went all the way to zero. So after that, I had developed my strategy. So it was going to have a real world utility no matter what, not some speculative play. Yep. It was going to have a genuine management team, and one where I could actually research who's behind it, what their acumen is, and what they bring to the table, and blah, blah, blah. Not any of these Satoshi Nakamoto wannabe anonymous guys. It was going to have strategic partnerships, because one thing, Lewis, I have definitely learned in life, nobody succeeds in isolation. Absolutely nobody. And so even a company as fantastic as XRP is as an asset, you need companies like Ripple. You need companies like these other companies that utilize 15 amicus briefs that were filed that say, hey, we use XRP in the XRP ledger. So it's not just Ripple. Ripple is the biggest player, but XRP itself. But anyway, it had to have strategic partnerships. Then I took a look at price action. Now, when I take a look at price action, I'm not just looking at what the price was, but I'm using what you did, Fibonacci retracement. I even employed Elliott wave theory and, support and resistance and all of that kind of stuff. And so having this mechanism, every asset I was going to get involved with was going to have this in play. And that helped me, not get just dragged along with, the fear of missing out and stuff like that. And it helped me, build this filter. Now, a lot of the ones that and the ones I really gained in had all that. Cardano had that, VeChain had that for sure. Hedera Hashgraph had that for sure. All of that kind of stuff in there. And so that helped me to make those plays. But when I take a look at XRP, to me, I just get excited being able to buy it. And I'm still buying it. I've bought it. Look, I'll tell you what, I'll just share this. I've never really shared this. So I'll give you guys the day before the lawsuit was dropped on XRP, I put in 5 figures. And I did it through a broker. I had a broker, went to an OTC account, and I bought 5 figures worth of XRP. And then the lawsuit drops, and it went. Judy and I, all we did is buy more. We just bought more. I never regretted it, not even for 1 second. I got it under $1. I was just as happy as if I got it at 10 cents.
Exactly. And people have been. That's a crazy story, by the way.
It's true. It's so true.
Yeah, that's why it's crazy. I think I used to get a lot of flack online because when I draw the Fibonacci's for XRP, I don't do that anymore. But I would always come to the same conclusion: the 0.236 line, which is that bottom one, is $1.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if you're buying in that zone,
Mm-hmm.
if you're buying anywhere under $1,
Yeah.
it's buy time. It's like
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
accumulation time.
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
could be 99 cents tomorrow, and I
yeah.
would still buy my last ones.
Yes. Yes.
So think about where we are. It's like
Yeah.
perspective. It's
It is. And
and
yeah,
it's
like it's just exciting to me. And so
yeah,
yeah, I can't assess any risk to XRP because I can see what it is. Now, some people will call me crazy. Oh, that's just ridiculous and this and that. And you really don't know what you're doing. Well, I guess if that's the case, it's my risk to take, I suppose, right? And so
yeah,
I'm for me, I've already adjudicated in myself that that's my appetite for it, you know? And so I'm okay with that. And I don't want to go, and I know it happens in your channel, happens in my, people like to put like where they're at on the, how much they've reached. And I get it. They're just excited that they've been able to reach a goal of an
yeah.
accumulation goal. But it's kind of like, in a way, not the wisest thing to do because of what it's going to be worth down the road.
The
Yeah.
amount of people. Okay, this should be a big eye-opening thing for everyone on here.
Mm-hmm.
And for you as well, especially you because of being online.
Mm-hmm.
I had one of my trusted community members message me
Mm-hmm.
saying, "I found all of this information about you. Just a quick search, and it wasn't malicious. It was actually to help.
Okay.
Um, I completely trust it was to help.
Yep. Yep.
Um, to just tell me, you need to actually be careful here because he was able to find out everything about me, my family, where I
Yikes.
go, what I do, the exact house I live in. It
Wow.
was, and he said this was 5 minutes. It took me 5 minutes,
Well, he's
and
probably
I.
skilled in doing that, but still,
I
yeah.
think he is. I think he is, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter. There's a lot of young people here that have the same skill level,
Right. Of
um,
course.
and so when you're announcing things like that, don't think for a second that people won't be in 5 years' time looking back through old XRP videos for people who've done
Yep.
that and
Yep.
finding those people.
Yes.
It's going to be insanely dangerous.
Yes.
If the numbers it might not be dangerous now because everyone's in the same boat.
Right.
No one's going to be mega rich right now at 30 cents.
No.
But when an XRP token is $10,000,
Mm-hmm.
you're a target now.
Yep.
And people, the amount of wealth that you will have generated by that time is well worth the effort it takes to go back onto YouTube, to look at old comments of people saying how much they have, to find everything they can about that person and find that
Mm-hmm.
person.
Mm-hmm.
That's well worth it for a criminal. That's a
Mm-hmm.
great ROI.
Oh yeah. No,
So
you've literally
don't
just
put your
painted an
numbers out
X.
there.
Yeah, I agree. You just paint an X on your back. And I understand the motivation is about, just, hey, I'm making it, guys. And looking for that affirmation, one of the
Yeah.
biggest drugs in human history is affirmation.
Well, and,
And
and it's mostly because people are very alone in this whole thing.
yeah,
Our
yeah,
spouses
yeah.
don't typically like to hear about it.
Or our family. Yeah,
Um,
the rest of our family. Yep.
yeah, and I made a video about this the other month saying,
Mm-hmm.
show your wife this video
Yeah.
because I tried to explain exactly
Yeah.
why we're excited.
Right.
And so people are, and that video is hugely popular.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
just showing it was just testament to the fact that people are operating on their own.
Right.
People are solitary in this journey. And
Yeah.
so I completely understand. It's like you need an outlet to tell someone, I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. Look,
Yep. Yep.
because
Yep.
the other
Yep.
people in your house don't care.
Yeah.
So maybe
Yeah.
someone
Good
online
point.
will.
Good point. Good point. No, that's very
Um,
strong. Now, having that provided a great segue because, one of the things that we all look at, and you get all kinds of speculative price actions out there. But one thing that, I think a lot of folks miss, because, the biggest thing I hear is, oh, well, when institutions adopt it, they're going to buy huge swaths of it. And that's what's going to bring value. The reality is actually, if institutions are going to get into this, more than likely, they're only going to need an itty bitty bit. And it's not going to be what people think. It's not the institutional thing, I don't think, that's going to drive demand and price. What are your thoughts on that? I want to hear what you think.
well, again, I think because I'm trying to make content all the time. I feel like I've made videos on all this stuff before. And so I'll keep relating to videos I've already made. But
Yeah, that's fine. If you did, go ahead.
so I made one video suggesting that one outcome could possibly be that the escrow gets divided among all the financial institutions around the world. So there's 25,000 banks.
Yep, there's lots.
That's one type. That's one type of financial institution.
Okay.
Then if you look, I just looked in the UK. There's X amount of into Europe. Sorry, there's X amount of banks in Europe, and I then searched how many financial institutions there are in Europe, and it was about 10-1. So 10-1 financial institutions to
you
banks.
mean money service businesses, money service.
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
Correct.
So now that's about another 250,000 of those.
Right.
If there's 25,000 banks. Okay, go ahead.
So you spread that out to the whole world and say how many banks are there in the world? How many financial institutions are there in the world? It's probably going to be similar. It's not going to be 100% accurate, obviously.
Sure, yeah.
But if you play with the idea that the IMF or whoever kind of controls this currency, because it's not going to be the states, is it? Because it's not the dollar anymore.
Not at all.
It's got to be someone else. So probably one of those top companies that kind of have the big brother approach to everything. What if they divided the escrow according to, let's say, perhaps gold reserves for countries, or the amount of transactions a company does in a day? What if they divided it that way? That would be interesting. I'm not even sure if that's even possible, because there's loads of outcomes. We ultimately don't know how it's going to go.
Right.
But that was trying to think of a use for the escrow without, because one thing I think about that is if the IMF wanted control, or whoever it is, I say IMF, but it's
sure, we don't know, somebody. Yep.
Yeah. If you're conscious that you don't want a monopoly to exist outside of yourself, which is probably the mentality, you probably don't want Ripple to have the monopoly over the escrow and the whole supply. So you could then potentially use the escrow as the stable amount of coinage that can be released and divided among all these institutions. And what it ends up being, if you did it, everyone got the same amount. All the institutions, even the small financial institutions versus a Chase Bank, for example, let's say they all got the same amount. Yeah, it would be like 20,000 tokens.
Yeah, it would be a small amount. They'd have to, and the money service businesses. So, any of those that you go in and you're wiring money. I mean, if you're thinking of those guys too, they're going to have to utilize the same messaging. So it would have an impact. And then, then XRP would have to have a high value because of what's going to be happening, with the transfer of all these, value assets. Now, the whole idea too about now I've talked about this before about, and this has come an earlier video of how, on-demand liquidity replacing Nostro Vostro. Now, a lot of folks don't truly understand, the mechanism for Nostro Vostro. It's more of a protection, if you will, with respect
insurance
to yes, it's more of because what it does, it's the underlying security of the liquidity, if you will. And Nostro Vostro is just ours, yours, or whatever. It's just a Latin term. And that's holding accounts in each other's banks, on a global scale, right? And of course, when you're dealing with a Swift message, so a Swift message is sending, it's basically sending a message over. Swift isn't actually, folding up some bills, putting it in some sort of envelopes, and it's sending a message over that, hey, look, we want you to credit thus and so's account over here, and we've debited so and so's account over here, and we've done all the KYC and AML, everything's good, blah blah blah, and then away she goes. Well, with the XRP ledger and utilizing that, of course, it's not just the message, it's the value in the actual asset itself is being transferred. And so if that's the case, then the asset itself would have to have a high value in order to transfer that amount of liquidity, because you have to have an underlying insurance or protection for the transaction. Otherwise, and there would have to be a certain level of stability. The price couldn't be highly volatile either in order to function that way, Now,
and to add to that too, if it wasn't a high price and that amount of transaction or dollar value of transactions were happening, it would be burnt to dust.
Yeah.
The burn rate at that level,
Yeah.
at that low price,
Yeah.
it would disappear.
It would consume it too fast, too fast.
Yeah.
Even with 1 million drops on each XRP token, the burn rate because that's something I think for the rank and file, for the majority of people, they don't think about how vast the liquidity is in cross-border payments. I mean, you're talking trillions of dollars. You know, something I read just recently, interestingly enough, on that aspect of is I guess in 2022, stablecoin settlement was somewhere in the neighborhood $7 to $8 trillion of settlement. And in comparative to like Visa, which was $12 trillion. So you can definitely, and that of course is not retail, right? That is like big business money, moving money. And when you think about that, you know, you're looking at it from an adoption point of view. Wow. I mean, what that is coming up to some serious levels of adoption that most of us don't even hear about. You know, we don't. I don't know about you, but I get a question all the time of, well, if big whales are accumulating, like they say, because we can see the open ledger, and thank God for the blessing of the transparent ledger, obviously.
Yeah.
But you know, they say, oh, then why isn't the price moving? And folks forget about the over-the-counter marketplace and how these massive volumes of huge pieces, whether they be equity or in this case, and how that actually works. And I find myself, you know, communicating quite a bit about, you know, understanding how, you know, global liquidity actually flows. It's quite amazing. What do you think about the whole EDSR kind of thing? Or that's right.
ESDR.
The ESDR, yeah, the whole, you know, special drawing rights through the IMF and based on the global, you know, the GDP of each nation is valued against that. That's how the balance, and they get to how much SDR as a company, a country, sorry, would have, and blah, 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 blah.
I think at most there will be a certain percentage of escrow allocated to become ESDR.
Okay.
I don't think they go with the whole thing. Although what I was saying earlier, now I'm just connecting dots now. What I was saying earlier about that higher entity distributing tokens in a way from the escrow kind of is that.
In a way, it could be.
Yeah, it could be. I can see how that happens. And that theory supports the idea of the whole escrow thing. So I've contradicted myself there in my thoughts.
Well,
but we're all learning. So
yeah, we are. You know, it's kind of like the whole idea. Don't you think of like I know this is going to scare a few folks out there, especially as we go into the whole CBDC type of dialogue. But so you have the Bank of International Settlements, where a lot of people say, hey, this is a central bank of central banks kind of deal. But it could foresee some sort of a global entity similar to the IMF. Now, the IMF came out in 1944, you know, and that's the whole Bretton Woods deal, right?
Yeah.
And so they could come out with some sort of a different model to manage, you know, the global monetary fund, you know, and how to manage, you know, these monetary instruments. And I love the way Augustine Carson describes fiat. He calls them liability instruments, right? Because that's what they are. It's central banks issuing notes of debt, you know. But needless to say, in that scenario that you know, were describing there about, you know, maybe a division of the escrow. And of course, you know, special drawing rights right now are viewed as the last form of monetary instruments should all other monetary instruments collapse. So in that scenario, let's say there's a global body that, you know, that is, you know, maybe you know, a twin of the IMF or a new iteration of that type of system. Do you think that this case that has been leveled against Ripple would be to have them forfeit the escrow? Because how did they get at that escrow, being that they're assets of Ripple? Or do you think Ripple will do what happened to them? They will gift that XRP to this body, or do you think it will be a forfeiture or something like that? I just thought of that, you know, kind of.
Well, that's no, because I'm connecting dots in my head. So as you were saying that, I was kind of thinking this as well, which aligns with my original kind of thought that about ESDRs, where they take a portion of it. What if that portion of that is that becomes ESDR is gifted in that manner to that higher entity, and they divide that smaller portion of the escrow to be distributed, at which point the amount that each institution gets is even less than 20,000 because it's a portion of the escrow at that point.
Right.
And if that portion's 25% of the escrow, and then you're dividing the 25% of the escrow among 250,000
like
institutions.
Now you're talking like such a significant price in the value of one XRP that, you know, you could literally be bordering on the lines of seven figures up there. I mean, really, when you think about global liquidity, I mean, look at the derivative market. Now we know the notional value of the derivative market is somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 600 trillion. Now and that is just but the full value, we don't truly know. And in fact, it's estimated to be well over 1 quadrillion, you know, in derivatives. Yep. And of course, derivatives are just plays on other people's plays in one respect. Like, it's a very, very scary proposition when you think about it. And just recently, I was reading an article that, you know, with respect to the Forex exchange, that a lot of pensions that were involved in Forex trading, that there's an undocumented debt of $81 trillion that has unaccounted. And when you think $81 trillion, I mean, it's such an unfathomable amount to really kind of think about. You could spend your whole lifetime counting one to whatever. You won't even make it to 1 trillion and you'll be, you know, dead, you know, every second. You know, it's just crazy. And the danger that's involved with that, you can almost see the whole system is going more and closer to an implosion, you know, because the reality is, without any kind of a back security, the only value of the currency is the confidence in the, you know, the economy that's issuing it, right? So, for instance, U.S. dollar, it gets its value from the confidence that the global, you know, network has towards what people think towards how big is the American economy? Well, it's still the largest economy in the world, at least at this point. However, with this new thing going on with China and with Saudi Arabia and, you know, Russia and all the other BRICS nations that are coming into play there, if Saudi Arabia really starts selling their oil outside of the US dollar, like what was arranged by Kissinger back in the 70s, it's game over for the world reserve currency for the US buck. And when that happens, bang, you're going to see a big drop. In 1971, when President Nixon took the US off of totally off the gold standard, its convertibility into gold by other nations when there was, you know, a balancing of debt. Well, of course, his thing, oh, well, the speculators playing. Well, what happened? You watch the dollar absolutely crash and the price of gold just went like that. And so if the US loses this position, because we are definitely seeing it's coming to that, they're going to have to reset the system in some way, or it's going to be absolute pandemonium and chaos. In every class, the pound, the dollar, whether it's AU, the Australian dollar, Canadian, any fiat currency, no one's going to have any confidence in it whatsoever. So this is where I could see something like what you're describing, where some sort of a mechanism comes in to kind of rescue the whole situation.
Yeah, and you can bet your bottom. No, I'm not going to say dollar. Bet your bottom XRP.
Your last XRP.
that they will shift the narrative to make it sound like they are rescuing the situation.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah,
and that'll be fed down to the majority of the people. It's all.
Yeah, I agree.
There's no way the smartest people in the world didn't see this coming.
No, absolutely.
If we can do it, if we can figure it out,
sure.
They thought of it years ago.
Oh my goodness, yes.